Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into the really remarkable life and mind of Charles Babbage. Now, that's a name you probably link straight to the dawn of computing, right? He's widely known as the father of the computer. And, well, for good reason. But what you might not know, and what we really want to unpack today, is that Babbage was honestly so much more. This was an English polymath. I mean, a brilliant mathematician, a philosopher, an inventor, incredibly prolific, a mechanical engineer, and, even a big deal in London's social scene.
Yeah, what's truly fascinating here, I think, is that many of his most ambitious machines were never actually finished or stayed conceptual in his lifetime, Babbage's ideas, they really laid the essential groundwork, the intellectual foundation for modern computing, and his impact just stretched across this astonishing number of fields. It's far beyond what most people probably think. So our mission today really is to dig into the sources and pull out the most important bits, the surprising facts about Babbage, to sort of illuminate this complex, brilliant, and sometimes quite irascible mind that truly shaped our digital future. Irascible meaning easily angered, a bit prickly.
Absolutely. And the sources we're using for this deep dive, they're a collection of articles, some research. It gives a really comprehensive view of his life and his, credible work. We'll trace his journey, from his early frustrations with errors in math tables right through to these groundbreaking visions that, frankly, anticipated concepts we see as fundamental in today's computers.
Okay, let's dive in. So maybe starting with the man himself. Charles Babbage was born December 26, 1791, in London, though apparently his exact birthplace is a little bit disputed. His father was a banking partner, which turns out to be pretty significant. Babbage inherited a large estate later in 1827. We're talking £100,000 back then. That's huge, equivalent to maybe $10.9 million or $15 million today. It basically made him independently wealthy.
Yes, and that independent wealth was, it was absolutely critical for Babbage. You have to think, without it, he might never have had the, let's say, luxury of spending decades on these really ambitious long-term projects. Things like the Analytical Engine, projects that, saw no immediate financial return. It really underscores how resources can enable, or I guess constrain, truly radical innovation, doesn't it?
That's a great point. It really does.
And his early education, that shaped him too. Like the library at Homewood Academy. That apparently really sparked his love for mathematics. So when he got to Cambridge University Trinity College first, then Peter has it, he'd already taught himself some pretty advanced math. In fact, there's a note saying he was actually disappointed in the standard mathematical instruction there.
Disappointed in Cambridge's math teaching. Wow. That's quite something for a student back then. What does that tell us about his approach, maybe? Did that sort of independence influence how he later challenged the scientific establishment?
Oh, I think it speaks volumes, yeah. About his self-reliance, his incredibly high standards. He wasn't just going to accept what was taught, right? He went after knowledge on his own terms.
Yeah.
And that intellectual independence, it definitely carried through his whole life. His student life wasn't exactly conventional either.
Yeah.
He was part of some interesting groups, the Ghost Club, for example, investigating spooky stuff.
Oh, okay.
And even something called the Extractors Club, which apparently was dedicated to liberating its members from the madhouse should any of them get committed.
Okay, the Extractors Club. I love that. What a kind of wild concept. It paints a picture of a mind that's brilliant, clearly, but maybe also a little bit eccentric. In a good way, perhaps.
I think so.
But despite that flair, 1827 was just a brutal year for him personally. Tragic, really. In just 1 year, he lost his father, his wife, Georgiana, they'd married against his father's wishes back in 1814, but it was described as a very happy marriage, and
Right.
2 of their sons, all in the same year. He was understandably inconsolable, took off on a long trip through Europe, never remarried.
Such immense loss.
And then, another awful blow just a few years later, his daughter, also Georgiana, died in her teens around 1834. It's just heartbreaking. You have to wonder, did these immense personal setbacks, this sort of profound sense of disorder, did that fuel his relentless drive for precision, for order in his machines? Was he kind of trying to control the unpredictable world through mechanics?
That's a really compelling thought. We can't know for sure, obviously, but it's plausible, isn't it? That such deep personal grief, that experience of loss and sheer unpredictability, it could well have reinforced a desire for absolute order, for predictability in the mechanical world he's trying to build. It certainly seems to fit with his later frustrations about human error and messiness.
Right.
And yet, despite all this immense personal loss, by the 1830s, Babbage was apparently a lion of the London social scene, which is quite a turnaround. His famous Saturday evening scientific soirees, these were like sparkling events on the London calendar. His house in Dorset Street was a proper hub of social and intellectual life. Harriet Martineau, the writer, she famously said all were eager to go to his glorious soirees. And he had this reputation as a captivating raconteur, a great storyteller. Being invited to dinner with Mr. Babbage was apparently a real coup for any hostess.
So he could charm a room then, but he also had this famously difficult side. I remember the title of his first biography, Irascible Genius. That says it all, doesn't it?
Precisely, yeah. He was known for what's been called incontinent savagery in his public attacks. Basically, a fiercely critical, really outspoken approach to the scientific establishment of the day. He often acted as if, well, being right entitled him to be rude.
Okay. We all know people like that, maybe.
Maybe. And this explains why, even though he was feted with honors by continental academies abroad, giving awards elsewhere, back home in England, he was seen as colorfully controversial and even eccentric.
Yeah.
He certainly didn't hold back, which perhaps hints at that single-minded focus he'd bring to his really ambitious projects.
That strong will, that personality, coupled with the brilliant mind, it really sets the stage for his computing work, doesn't it? And that started, as you mentioned, with a really critical problem of the time. These printed mathematical tables, they were absolutely essential, right, for navigation, science, engineering. But they were just notoriously full of errors. Mistakes came from the calculations themselves done by human computers, remember, and then also from just copying them down for printing.
Exactly. And his big aha moment, he talks about himself, happened around 1812. He was looking at a table of logarithms, knew it was probably full of mistakes, and suddenly the idea hit him, computing all tabular functions by machinery. He was especially inspired by this French government project. They had a team of like 80 people, 80 human computers, performing only addition and subtraction to create these huge tables. And this showed him the potential for mass production applied to arithmetic. It really grabbed him, this idea that the boring, laborious work of these, frankly, unskilled human computers could just be taken over entirely by machines, which would be faster and way more reliable.
The idea of machines doing calculations, that must have been just revolutionary back then when computers were still people. So this inspiration led to his first big design, the difference engine, started in 1822. And its main purpose was to automatically compute and print these tables, specifically for polynomial functions. It used something called the method of finite differences, which basically meant, well, instead of complex multiplications or divisions,
right, which were mechanically very complex to build.
This brilliant method let the machine calculate even quite intricate polynomial functions just by doing repeated additions. It's like building something complex using just simple, repetitive steps.
It was a revolutionary concept, yeah. But the practical challenges were just immense. He hired a guy, Joseph Clement, to actually build it. But they had a big falling out over cost around 1831. And the first difference engine, well, it just remained unfinished. It would have been enormous. Something like 25,000 parts, weighed 15 tons, stood 8 feet tall. Imagine trying to machine that in the 1830s.
15 tons. Wow. That's incredible scale. So it was never completed in his lifetime then?
No, it wasn't. But, and this is where his vision gets this amazing vindication later, difference engine number 2. He designed this between 1847 and 1849. The British government didn't fund it at the time, however. Much later, in 1991, the Science Museum in London actually built it from his original plans. And guess what? It proved his machine would have worked perfectly, returning results to an incredible 31 digits of precision.
No way. So they finally built it based on his plans over a century later, and it worked.
Exactly. And another thing people don't always realize, a significant innovation. Babbage also designed the first computer printers. The Science Museum actually completed the printer for difference engine number 2 in the year 2000. So his ideas were provably sound, decades, even a century plus after he died.
That is just an incredible story of vindication, amazing foresight. And from the difference engine, he moved on to, well, arguably his most profound invention, right? The Analytical Engine, designed starting around 1837. And this machine, this is where things really jump forward. It marks that crucial shift from just mechanized arithmetic to what we'd now call fully fledged general purpose computation. This is where his ideas really leap into the future.
Oh, absolutely. It's remarkable how many of its features just scream modern computing. They anticipated concepts fundamental to today's CPU architecture. For instance, it had an arithmetic logic unit, the ALU. Babbage called it the mill. It could do addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Just like today's processors, it had memory. He called it the store. Designed to hold numbers, intermediate results, again, fundamental. It had a control unit to direct the operations, central to how computers run instructions, and maybe its most famous innovation, It was programmed using punched cards. He openly borrowed that idea from the Jacquard loom, which used cards to weave patterns.
Punched cards, like the early IBM computers used much, much later.
Exactly. And crucially, it could also output results, including printing them. The analytical engine, it truly anticipated core modern concepts. Sequential control, branching like if statements looping. In principle, theoretically, it would have been the first mechanical device that could be considered Turing complete.
Turing complete. Okay, that sounds incredibly significant. What does that actually mean for a 19th century machine?
Well, what Turing complete essentially means is that, theoretically, if it had enough memory, enough store, and enough time, it could perform any calculation that any modern computer could perform. Given the right instruction, the right program on those punch cards. That's how truly fundamental and, frankly, how far ahead of his time Babbage's design really was.
Mind-blowing, really. And it's right here with the Analytical Engine that we have to talk about the remarkable collaboration with Ada Lovelace. She was a mathematician, a real visionary herself, corresponded a lot with Babbage while he was developing it, and she's credited with developing what's considered the first algorithm meant to be run on a machine, specifically for calculating Bernoulli numbers, which is why she's often called the first computer programmer. But what's maybe even more profound is that she saw beyond just numbers. She predicted computers could manipulate symbols, not just do math. She foreshadowed modern computing's general-purpose nature, multimedia, everything. She captured it beautifully when she wrote, "We may say most aptly that the analytical engine weaves algebraical patterns just as the Jacquard loom weaves flowers and leaves."
It's a perfect analogy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Captures that programmability, the versatility she saw in it. Babbage, by the way, he visited Turin in 1840, gave the only public explanation and lectures about the analytical engine there. And it's fascinating. Lovelace's famous notes, they were actually a translation and an expansion of an Italian paper describing those very talks. So his influence, even without the machines being fully built, it spread internationally. There were Swedish followers like Per Georg Scheutz also experimenting with automated computation. It shows his ideas were really making waves.
Okay, so his computing machines are clearly his most famous legacy, no doubt about it. But Babbage's genius, it wasn't just confined to gears and punch cards, was it? His curiosity seems boundless. His mind led him down all these other fascinating, sometimes really surprising paths. Let's maybe explore some of those lesser-known contributions.
Yeah, definitely. His interests were incredibly diverse. Let's see. In engineering and inventions, he invented the pilot, the cow catcher. That metal frame on the front of locomotives to clear obstacles off the tracks. That was 1838. He built a dynamometer card, too, for measuring railway performance. He even invented an ophthalmoscope for looking inside the eye. Unfortunately, it was kind of ignored at the time, but later independently reinvented by Hermann von Helmholtz.
An ophthalmoscope. Wow.
Then there's public systems and reform. He was key in founding the Royal Astronomical Society in 1820, won their gold medal in 1824, for his invention of an engine for calculating mathematical and astronomical tables. So, recognition for the idea even then. He worked on setting up a modern postal system. He concluded there should be a uniform rate, which happened with the penny post. He also surveyed actuarial tables, worked on statistical analysis of mortality. You see that passion for rational, mechanized systems applied to public life, too.
So he was applying that same rigorous analytical mind to literally everything. Trains, mail, life expectancy.
Exactly. And look at his 1832 book on the economy of machinery and manufactures. It was this hugely influential early work of what we now call operational research. Based on his observations in factories, it described what's now called the Babbage principle. It's about the commercial advantage of dividing labor carefully, cutting costs by making sure you only assign high-skill tasks to your high-cost skilled workers, and restrict other tasks to lower-paid workers.
The Babbage principle. That sounds incredibly modern, doesn't it?
It really does. It's not just some dusty historical theory. It's a foundational idea that, still underlies things like outsourcing, global supply chains today. He's analyzing factory floors in the 1830s, but he's basically describing how we organize complex work in the 21st century.
And that influenced Karl Marx, too, apparently. Quite a legacy for a book on manufacturing.
Indeed. And he was also a polemicist. Loved a good argument, a sharp critique. His 1830 book, Reflections on the Decline of Science and Some of Its Causes, was this blistering attack on the Royal Society, the state of British science. But this controversial work actually led promptly to the formation in 1831 of the British Association for the Advancement of Science, BAS, camel and toe. And he also chaired its statistical section, which then led to the foundation of the Statistical Society.
So his criticisms, however savage, as you put it, they actually spurred positive change.
Interesting. They really did. And then there's this other layer, his almost secret work in cryptography, which is fascinating. As early as 1845, Babbage had solved the Vigenère cipher, a pretty tough code for the time. During the Crimean War in the 1850s, he broke both Vigenère's auto-key cipher and the simpler version. But his discovery was kept as a military secret. It wasn't published. Credit went to others later on. His priority in code breaking wasn't actually established until 1985. Just shows how many layers of genius were there.
Wow, a secret code breaker, too.
And finally, yeah, we can't ignore his eccentricities in public campaigns. Babbage famously got involved in these very public, often unpopular campaigns against public nuisances. He once apparently counted all the broken window panes in a factory, then published a table listing the causes.
Counting broken windows.
Yep, and he particularly hated street music, especially organ grinders. Hated them. Published observations of street nuisances in 1864 where he tallied 165 nuisances over a period of 80 days.
So Babbage, the visionary computer pioneer, was also maybe the original Victorian get-off-my-lawn guy. The man mechanizing calculations was meticulously counting organ grinder disruptions. That's quite a contrast.
Exactly. A brilliant mind, but maybe not always the easiest neighbor. He even campaigned against kids rolling hoops, hoop-rolling boys, blaming them for making horses break their legs. He got denounced for it in Parliament in 1864, but it perfectly shows that same obsession with order, with data, that drove his computing work, just applied to his everyday frustrations.
Okay, bringing it all back then to the overarching story of Babbage's visionary mind. Despite his machines mostly staying on paper or unfinished during his lifetime, what really stands out is just the sheer power of his ideas.
Absolutely. I mean, Babbage's true legacy, it isn't really in the physical machines completed back then. It's in the ideas, the concepts that profoundly shaped computer science. And we can draw direct lines, right? The mill evolves into today's CPU, the arithmetic logic unit. The store becomes memory, RAM. His punch cards laid the groundwork for programming instructions. His ideas about sequential logic, that's control flow, loops, the stuff we use every single day in coding. His vision of a programmable general-purpose computing machine. It genuinely preceded actual computers by, over 100 years?
It's incredible, and it's great to see his contributions are still recognized today. There are statues, the Babbage programming language from the 60s, computing institutions, awards named after him. His image was even on the British passport in 2015. And The Economist's science blog is called Babbage. That's pretty cool. And there's even that modern project, Plan 28, started in 2011, trying to actually construct the analytical engine. It shows his vision for mechanical computation is still relevant, maybe even in fields like micromachines, nanotechnology. The Economist called it Babbage's last laugh in their End of the Millennium issue.
He kind of predicted that too, didn't he? He wrote this prophetic passage near the end of his life, something like, "If unwarned by my example, any man shall undertake and shall succeed in really constructing an engine upon different principles or by simpler mechanical means, quote, I have no fear of leaving my reputation in his charge, for he alone will be fully able to appreciate the nature of my efforts and the value of their results." He knew someone would eventually get it right.
What an incredible figure, really. Charles Babbage wasn't just the father of the computer. He was a social commentator, an engineer, a reformer, a pioneer in stats and crypto, and just this brilliant mind whose ideas were generations ahead. He was, in so many ways, a man out of time.
Which definitely raises an important question for us, I think. What can we learn from Babbage's story today? About innovation, about the importance of those foundational ideas, maybe, and about the long arc of intellectual impact, even when, society isn't quite ready or the resources aren't there to match a visionary's pace.
That's a powerful thought to end on, isn't it? To think how many core ideas of our digital world really stem from this sometimes grumpy, incredibly brilliant polymath working away in 19th century London. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the absolutely fascinating world of Charles Babbage. We hope you'll continue exploring these amazing intersections of history, technology, and, just sheer human ingenuity.